that got me going. I don't know about you. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. Not to disparage any other duet partner I've ever had, but we got to hold those notes a long time. I don't always get to do that. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Malcolm. I appreciate it. So I chose that song because today I'm talking about grace and gratitude. You'll hear the gratitude song later. But we need, just like every child needs to find a place, guide us with your grace. And since it's approaching Thanksgiving also, which is my favorite holiday, I've shared with you before, and it's not just about the turkey. I'm not going to do without the turkey, you understand, but it's not just about the turkey. I don't know, it gives me a warm feeling inside to think that our country, that is so commercialized at this point and seems to be all about the almighty dollar, gives us a day to take off work, to be with our families, for nothing more than to be thankful. And there's very little they can sell for Thanksgiving other than turkeys and cranberries and sweet potatoes. Ham, okay. So it's the one holiday I think that hasn't really become commercialized, and gratitude has such an important place in my life. So I love this idea. So let's just define grace and gratitude. Grace, and this is several definitions. One definition for grace is a way of moving through the world that is not stiff or awkward, but smooth. So when you see someone and you say, oh, that's a graceful person, there's a way, a lot of times we're talking about how they physically move through the world, but there's also a way to move through the world mentally and emotionally and spiritually with grace. And the other definition for grace is divine assistance. I ignored all the definitions I didn't like. So, divine assistance. And graceful, full of grace, means pleasing in movement or form. Gracious, another word that's related, means pleasing, kind, or courteous, merciful, or compassionate. And gratitude is a state of being grateful, a feeling or expression of appreciation. And I especially love that word appreciation, because what happens when something appreciates? It goes up in value. So anything that you give your appreciation for rises in value. And I think in direct correlation to how much appreciation you give it. And to be grateful or thankful means to be conscious of benefit received, expressive of thanks, glad or well pleased. So I want to talk today about the connection between grace and gratitude. So first of all, anybody in here not received any grace lately? I didn't think so. All right. I want to give you a couple of quotes. I love this one from John chapter 1. From the fullness of God's grace, we have all received one blessing after another. We've all received. That means even if you don't feel like you've received it, you've received it. The fact that you can feel bad means you've got some grace because you're still here feeling something. And I love this quote from the Sufi poet Rumi. Hear blessings dropping their blossoms all around you. So he's basically saying, listen, they're there. You got to listen for them. So grace is evidence that we've received. It's freely given. And gratitude is a spiritual practice that appreciates in value the things that we receive from grace. Gratitude actually is the recognition, I would say, of grace. It's a practice of awareness, of acknowledgement, and it allows the enjoyment of our grace. Because when we don't recognize or listen or pay attention to the grace that's around us, we don't enjoy it. How many times have you said in your life, oh, looking back on that, I wish I knew how lucky I was at the time. I didn't enjoy it. How many of you look back at when you were younger and go, gosh, I was so pretty then. Why didn't I think I was pretty? Now I'm old, and I'm not anymore, and I didn't enjoy it. Well, let me tell you, 20 years from now, you're going to look at you now and say, I was so pretty back then. Why didn't I enjoy that? Right? That's the way it is in all of our lives, you know? We have to notice it. We have to pay attention to it. We have to appreciate it in order to enjoy it. And we're meant to enjoy grace. So Meister Eckhart, who was a 13th century monk, Dominican monk, the Dominicans were a brotherhood of preachers. You know, some different brotherhoods had different purposes. They were preachers. He was also a writer, and he was considered a mystic. He was very much a teacher of his time. He taught in some of the great schools in Europe, and some of his writings were brought up before the Spanish Inquisition because they didn't like what he said, which actually makes him okay in my book. And this is my favorite quote of him. I bring it up to myself all the time. He says, if the only prayer you ever said in your life was thank you, that would be enough. And I just want to share a psalm about gratitude. Psalm 30 says, to the end that my glory may sing praise to you and not be silent, O Lord my God, I will give thanks to you forever. That means, I think, that when I give thanks for you, my glory is not silent. My glory is silent when I don't give thanks. But when I do give thanks, my glory is out there for the whole world to see. And I like this. This is the translation from the Message Bible, which is fun. I always look up different translations. It says, I'm about to burst with song. I can't keep quiet about you. God, my God, I can't thank you enough. What would your life be like if you started every day with that kind of feeling inside? I'm about to burst with song. So why is it so important to say thank you? It's not because God needs us to say thank you. God has no needs, I promise you. God is completely sufficient. God is not keeping score and going, well, she didn't say thank you for that, so, you know. It's not about that. It's about what the thankfulness does to and for us. Saying thank you means automatically, it means you received something, right? You couldn't say thank you if you hadn't received something, and it makes you aware of the good you've been given. Saying thank you makes you aware, and it opens worlds. And I taught my daughter from the time she was real little that the only appropriate response to a gift of any kind is to say thank you. And that little thank you, even from a child, acknowledges both the gift and the giver. It's a small verbal way of giving something back. It's a gift. When you've given me a gift, I say thank you. I've given you a small verbal gift back. And A Course in Miracles teaches to give is how to recognize you have received. To give is how to recognize you have received. And so giving thanks is a way of recognizing how that we have received. And Viktor Frankl, one of my just the favorite writers, he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. He spent several years in a concentration camp in Germany, and his wife and both of his parents died during that time. And he came out of the concentration camp not bitter, but with purpose, and actually created a whole psychology, a whole school of psychology, really, about the importance of finding meaning in life. And one of the things that he observed that has stuck with me since I read the book several times, but the first time I read it, I was very young, like 19 or 20, and it stuck with me, is that the people in the concentration camp who were able to hold on to their humanity in the face of being treated like objects or animals or less, that were still able to hold on to their humanity were the people who could give something. So if they had one crust of bread, if they could give half a crust of bread, that was how they held on to who they are, that they were human, which means to be imbued with divinity. The people who got so scared that they held on to every little thing they had were the people who, and it's not a judgment. I mean, I don't know what I would do in that circumstances, but they lost a lot more than just their physical and mental health and well-being. And so that is to be able to give, even if it's just to give thanks, even if it's just to give a smile, is a way of recognizing what we have. Any little thank you you say ever is an awareness that you've gotten something. And when you say the thank you, that thing that you've gotten appreciates in value as you notice it. So I use gratitude as a regular spiritual practice. It's probably the most important one to me. Years and years ago, I was a newly single mother. No, I wasn't newly single. Actually, I just had hoped I was going to be single soon. I married very young, and after 5 years of marriage, I thought that maybe it would get better if we had a baby. No, just for the record, that didn't help. It was an abusive relationship. I was treated poorly from the beginning, and it escalated. And once my daughter was born, I knew it was time to get out. But by that time, I was so beaten down. You know, abusers, they isolate you first from all your friends and family. Isolated me from my church, isolated me from almost everything. But I was teaching school at a local junior high, and I remember just breaking down during, thank God it was our free period. The choir director and I were crying, and I was crying in her office. And I said, you know, when people used to say, I don't know how to pray, I remember as a child thinking, well, that's stupid. You just talk, you know? What do you mean how to pray? But at that point in my life, I felt like I had forgotten how to pray. I didn't even know how to approach God at that point. And what she said to me was, Melinda, God already knows every single thing that you need. Why don't you start thanking him for what you have? And I literally stayed up all night that night thanking God. And it got to the point, you know, by like 5 o'clock in the morning, I was like, thank you for these shoelaces that hold my feet together, that hold my shoes on my feet. I mean, I just kept on and kept on. And the fact that I was so miserable and yet could say thank you all night long, not repeating myself, let me know how truly blessed I was and gave me the strength to take the next step, which was to get myself and my daughter into a safe place. And from there, my life got better and better. Another short story. Those of you who know me know, the last 5 years, my life has almost completely changed. I mean, upside down. My best friend and music partner died almost 5 years ago now. The next year, my beloved church started falling apart. I left a job that I had loved. Here's the thing, I loved the job. I was passionate about it. I loved the people. It was my family. It's where my daughter was born. It's where I met my husband. I loved it, but I had to leave it. God made it very clear to me that it was time to go. That was scary. That had been my livelihood for many years. And my husband said, don't worry about it. Concentrate on your music. I make enough money at my job. And then within the next year, his partner came in and said, I don't think we should work together anymore. I want you out of here. Now, this was a company he had started and brought this partner into. And it was devastating. It was scary. It was scary. And then my mom was diagnosed with dementia, and I had to move my parents out of their home. And then my dad died. And I mean, everything. You know, I can't go home to mommy anymore. That relationship is done. I can't call David anymore, who was my go-to guy. I can't, you know, it's just like all of the things that I held on to were gone. And so what I had to learn is that it's not about finding new things to hold on to. It's about learning to praise God even when I was all at sea. And so for a year, while my husband negotiated the contract with his partner, we never knew if we were going to get any money at all or what we were going to do afterward, for basically a year. And the way I made it through those years, I got up every morning, and the first thing I did was to write a gratitude list. And sometimes it was grudging. Well, I guess I thank you that the sun came up this morning, And sometimes it was more joyful than that. But it always got me to a place where I could make it through the day. Gratitude is the only spiritual practice that I have found personally that can get me out of a depression. And I've struggled with depression since I was a teenager, probably before then. So what I found is it is impossible to whine and feel you have nothing if you can say even one small thank you. Thank you is an admission of good received. And from that first thank you can flow a spirit of generosity, which becomes a continuing recognition of all the many ways that we're gifted in every moment by Creator, by creation. God blesses me through you. God blesses me through what's around me. God blesses me directly. There's no end. God blesses me through the plants. God blesses me through the food I eat. So it's not the grace itself, because we all receive grace. It's the recognition that leads us to gratitude. And remaining unaware of the grace that's in our lives keeps us in poverty. And I absolutely believe that is literally, financially, mentally, emotionally, physically, when we don't recognize the good we have, we are impoverished. It's another quote from Rumi, and I love this. He says, "Wear gratitude like a cloak, and it will feed every corner of your life." I think about that, just putting on a big, warm, fuzzy gratitude cloak. And then knowing from that action that everything in your life is better. Everything appreciates from that moment. So how do you do it? Well, one thing, like I said, just start thinking. Just start thinking. Start somewhere. Rumi also says, if all you can do is crawl, start crawling. Start crawling. I want to share one more thing that I've just started again as a practice. I kind of forgot about it, but many, many years ago, I saw a workshop by a woman who had a very sad, long story, been through a terrible divorce, lost her health, gained a lot of weight, her relationship with her kids wasn't good, her whole life was falling apart. And she realized at some point that she had stopped being grateful for anything. And she started with her body. And she started every morning in the shower with soap, or after she got out of the shower with lotion, thanking every body part. Thank you, feet, for taking me where I need to go. You remember that? Thank you, calves. Thank you, knees, for supporting me all this time. I promise I'll take better care of you from here on in. Thank you, thank you, thank you to your internal organs, to your head, to your neck, to your lungs, to your heart. Because the fact that you're here means something's working. And she did that just as an exercise in helping herself remember how much health she had. But what happened that she didn't expect was that her health improved, that that her diabetes went away, that there was no trace of anything wrong with her heart after a few months. She lost 65 pounds. She swore at the time, without actually changing her diet. But just through loving her body. So that's possibly a place to start. I've started that again, and I do have the idea that I'll lose some weight I'm hoping. So if all you can do is crawl, start crawling. It doesn't matter where you start. It may be just saying thank you to the people around you. It may be being more aware of the waiter who's pouring water into your glass. It may be being more aware of the trees in your yard when you walk out in the morning. Just start saying thank you. Crawl. So, the next thing, grace, gratitude, then we complete that circle as gratitude brings us back to grace. So we know we're graced, and we're cultivating an awareness of grace, and when we cultivate that awareness, that gives birth to gratitude. And then the habit and spirit of gratitude gives birth to grace again. This time, grace from us. Grace through us. Because once you realize what you have and you are actively in practice of appreciating it, then you have so much more to give than you ever thought. And it will begin to pour from you. And the people around you will be blessed with the grace that you give. So that gratitude gives birth to grace again. And that brings me to another quote of Meister Eckhart's. I love going in circles. This is another one of my favorite ones. I wrote a paper on him last month, so there you go. We are celebrating the feast of the eternal birth, which God the Father has borne and never ceases to bear in all eternity. The feast of the eternal birth that was born and never ceases to bear. But if it takes not place in me, what avails it? Everything lies in this, that it should take place in me. So to me, this means that God did not create us past tense. God is intimately involved with every moment of our lives. In some translations, that actually says God is on the birthing bed, giving birth to the universe in every moment. If we were just born a long time ago and then left on our own, I think we would be in much worse shape. But the fact is, we have a God, we have a love, we have an energy that moves through us every day and is constantly recreating and sustaining us in every moment. And so that brings us to a place, that second part of the quote, but if it takes not place in me, what avails it? So God's on the birthing bed, supplying air to us in every moment, no matter what, no matter if we're asleep or awake, literally or metaphorically. So that, Meister Eckhart says, doesn't do me much good unless I consent to that grace, unless I say yes to it, unless I agree with it, notice it, participate in it, integrate it into me, appreciate it, raise it in value, and then we have completed that circle. It's the grace, it's the gratitude for the grace, and then it's the involvement that brings grace full circle into something that we give through us. Grace to us, grace in us, grace as us. And thus, we complete that circle. The newness of life that we're given in every moment means we are meant in turn to love and acknowledge and give out and create and sustain the worlds that we are making. And make no mistake, every morning you get up, you're making a world. You're making your world for that day. I don't always do such a good job of it, I'll admit it right here. But when I can start with gratitude, I do a lot better job of creating my world and the worlds of the people around me. God bless them. When I participate actively in the process of grace and gratitude and back to grace again. And in so doing, we are truly partners with God in the birthing of the universe. Thank you. Thank you. I'd like, if you don't mind, to do a short meditation in practice of this for a moment. Are you willing to